welcome back to another episode of Collider Witching Hour. If you're listening, you're probably going, that's not Perri. And if you're watching, you're also probably going, wait, that's not Perri. Our lovely Miss Nemiroff is off living it up in Cabo for the Jumanji junket, so I have the pleasure of sitting here with our wonderful Dorina Arellano.
Yeah, good job, Haleigh.
Thank
yeah.
you. Welcome.
Hey, I'm so happy I'm here.
I'm so happy you're here, too. Thank you for joining me.
No, thank you for having me. I cannot replace Perri, but I'm happy to always chat with either Perri or Haleigh because they're my favorite witches at Collider. So.
Yes.
And Perri is off being a witch and bungee jumping because she's crazy.
She enjoys that way too much.
Good for you. That's terrifying.
If you guys haven't seen, go check her social medias. Like there's video and pictures of her bungee jumping, and she's clearly in a state of like peak joy.
Right.
I would be crying.
Same. Yeah, you would have to actually throw me out.
Exactly.
Because I wouldn't jump. It'd be like a cat or something. I'd be so scared.
I'd need to be pushed.
Maybe a crowdfund for charity one day. But
that's a nice reason to do it.
Yeah. But anyways, how you doing, my fellow witch?
I am doing great. I'm excited about our topics today. We're kind of like... You know, Perri and I talked about Dr. Sleep pretty heavily over the last couple episodes, but we didn't necessarily talk as much about the idea of reboots and remakes and the good ones, the less good ones, what we would maybe want to see, and some topical tie-ins as well, because I did it. I watched Joker.
You did it!
I did it.
I'm so excited.
Yes.
Can we talk about it now, or are we going to talk about it later?
We can talk about it in 1 minute if you want to start there, but just let me, because I will forget.
Okay.
We have another giveaway for you guys this week. We are continuing our giveaway partnership with Shudder and RLJE Films. So this
Shudder.
Yes.
I love them so much. If you guys haven't subscribed to Shudder, it's literally my current favorite app to watch, to stream anything.
I rave about it constantly, and I feel like I always have to be like, we're not actually sponsored by them. It's just really good.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. I mean, they had that crazy Halloween theme thing where you could call in and some like a live human person, non-robot, would actually like give you recommendations. Like that's the coolest thing.
It's very cool.
It's like going to Blockbuster or something.
And Sam's a cool guy, so it'd just be fun to talk to him on the phone.
Exactly.
But this week we have one I'm actually not super familiar with, so watch it and tell me what you guys think about it. We have 2 codes for a film called Small Town Killers, which exclusively premieres on Shudder. Oh, no, I misread the press release. I'm actually correct. I'm so good at words. It did exclusively premiere on Shudder. It is now arrived on VOD, digital HD, DVD, and Blu-ray because there are too many methods in this day and age to watch a movie. But you, my friends, can download and watch it for free. We will be posting a tweet to the giveaway, so to enter will need to like and retweet, and we will pick a winner in the coming weeks. Yeah, that's how that works. That's how giveaways go.
Well, it's amazing that you can just have to tweet and then you get free shit.
You get free movies.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Pretty nice. All right. Now let's do it.
Okay. So I'm so happy you watched this movie because I'm obsessed with it. And I also have been, I think I've said this before on Collider Live, that since Blade Runner 2049, I haven't talked about a movie so much with my friends because after watching Blade Runner 2049, some of us loved it, some of us hated it, and we're just going back and forth being nerds and overanalyzing this movie. So the same exact thing has happened with Joker.
Yeah.
What did you think? Did you like it?
I like it. So to explain why I literally just watched it last night, when you work online and live online all day, some things aren't worth the mental health toll. Like, I'm actually breaking my rule right now. I made myself a promise that I would not discuss Joker on air or on Twitter or anywhere because I don't have the bandwidth to deal with the fallout from it if it goes wrong.
You said this to me early on when I went to see it and you hadn't seen it, and I was like, oh, that makes sense because the internet.
Yeah, exactly. You make choices and know yourself and set your boundaries. And because the conversation got so specifically toxic around this one, I just didn't really want to get in there. But now, having seen it, I don't think the conversation needed to be that toxic. Like,
Agreed.
it's really, I can see why it would be controversial or challenging, I suppose, in some ways, but it's really not worth all that uproar. I think it's solid and it's good. There are things about it I didn't like, but I found, even though I knew everything that was going to happen, just sort of like one of the things that's going to happen on the job if you decide not to watch something is it will be entirely spoiled for you.
Right.
But even though I knew all of it, like I did find the specifically like the last 20 minutes very effective.
Yes.
And that's really when it won me over.
Yeah, and I'm glad you think that, because it's crazy to have seen the controversy on social media, everybody yelling on Twitter, the media, all the headline fear mongering. It was just so much, and I'm not quite sure if it was just purely for like clickbait. But there was so many people in our nerd space that are fans of, comic book movies in general that were already hating on this movie before it came out. And that was so bizarre to me because, people are like, I don't want to empathize with the Joker as a villain. And I'm like, I don't think that's what the movie was supposed to be. To me, it did have elements of that, but that's not the point of the movie. I feel like I didn't need a Joker movie, and what I got, I loved, and that's a huge task to do for me, who I consider myself sort of a movie snob, and I think this character, I grew up being so fascinated by him because he's the answer to Batman in the sense that they're both created by a chaotic society, and one of them chooses to try to do good and the other one just wants to create more chaos, but they both come from somewhere, right? Like they became the Joker and Batman because of their circumstances. And as much as we have all this entertainment in our franchises, whether it's Star Wars or all the MCU movies, other DC movies as well, that focus on good versus evil, why does somebody become evil, right? That's a fascinating thing that not a lot of people touch on. Like, it's so easy to just be like, oh, well, like, Voldemort's the bad guy, right? But why did he get there, right? And that's important and I think relevant to our times to discuss those things as to how can we possibly avoid that from happening, or how can we as a society take some sort of accountability and not letting things get that bad for people to make those choices. As much as, these, as a human, you have a choice to become you have the choice whether or not you do bad things, and you don't have to agree with the things that these people do. You can still understand their pain and why they became the way they did, if that makes sense.
Well, I think you're coming at it from a place of tremendous empathy, and it's not like, I don't think that this is a film that people shouldn't have been, having conversations about. I definitely think there's a question of where the films. It's clear where your empathy lies. I'm less certain about the films,
right?
And I do think it has some messaging about mental health that's a little out there. But I also don't go to my movies for messaging usually,
right?
So that's not I understand that depictions of mental health are important and those conversations need to happen, but I think that it's the conversation that's more important than the films themselves, in terms of like how we approach that matter.
Right.
I was a little conflicted on what the movie overall was trying to say in terms of its empathy and stance on mental health, but I think what I didn't expect from it necessarily is like, it wasn't in a lot of ways what I expected, but I guess the like slowness of the development and like his sort of turn to the. I didn't expect him. I'm trying to find the right way. I did not expect him to so very much not be the Joker at the beginning,
right?
To the point that I was like, ugh. Like, I don't, that's like, you do what you want, Todd Phillips, so this is not the Joker and not for me. And I still feel that it's not my version of the Joker that I prefer.
Right.
I like the giddy, giggling Joker. That's
like the Mark Hamill.
Yes, 100%. Right. That's my favorite version of the character. Yes. Or going back to the Goofy TV show, that also has another similar read on the character.
Like Cesar Romero, you mean?
Yeah. but that's not to say this take isn't invalid, and that's sort of what I wanted to like. Why I thought that was a good fit for like the theme of our episode here is it's a reboot in a sense. It's certainly a readaptation, and even if it's not my preferred version of the character, I'd way rather see something different than the same thing only for 60 years.
Right. That's what made it interesting to me is that I was being a nerd and thinking, why are they doing this? We don't need this. And I saw, Joaquin's attached. I'm like, oh, well, at least he'll be good no matter what material he's given, right? Mm-hmm. But I think it's a character-driven story, regardless of what you think of, like you said, like what your preference is for how invested you are in these characters and what would you prefer to see on screen. But we do have a lot of options
yeah, exactly.
if we want to go back to the goofy Joker, to the more chaotic, Heath Ledger type killing joke Joker, right, that we saw. And I just think it was a cool, different take on it. And whatever you think of the movie, whether you like it or not, story-wise, I think it's a really beautiful, well-filmed movie. I was so obsessed with the score. Mm-hmm. Hildur, the cellist that worked with Johan Johansson, she did a fantastic job. When you see Joaquin just walking on the streets of Gotham, and you hear like the thunderous strings, it felt like I was watching a Hitchcock movie with score by Bernard Herrmann, which is interesting because that's what I think why I like the movie, because it felt like a horror movie. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense? And that's why I'm curious as to like you as a horror fan as well, if you felt that way and if that was your take also, because that's maybe why people thought it was so disturbing, right? But we're used to seeing much more disturbing things on film.
I do think it falls into the genre, and I think that's probably why I like The Last Bit the best, is because it is the most horrific.
Yeah.
It's surprisingly horror-y to me. Mm-hmm. I knew that it was playing on genre lines, but especially the score, as you said, is it's very evocative, and it does on its own make you feel bad and like scared and stressed. And I, again, knowing what happened, was surprised by particularly the final bit of violence. I don't know, do we need to do non-spoilers? It's been out for so long.
Right, yeah, spoilers, guys.
Spoilers
for
Joker.
You go.
But yeah, like when Murray Franklin got shot in the fucking face, I knew that was coming and still was very affected by it in a way I did not expect. And it did make me feel like dark, gross, psychological horror things. And also the imagery of the bloody smile was very effective and deeply chilling. And all of that was so much more horror-y than I was expecting, even having heard for months how disturbing people found it.
Yes. I mean, I think my favorite scene in the whole movie is the most horror-like scene, which is when he's in his apartment and his two old coworkers come visit him.
Oh yeah, that's a great scene. That is
holy, like that. The whole time there, because you don't know if he's going to kill the little guy. Like when he's trying to reach for the door. Like it was so effective.
Yeah.
And I felt like they did a great job with you seeing the Joker be. Do you know is he going to do it or not? Is he going to be a bad person right now or not? And then he lets him go, and then you're thinking, oh, because he didn't, hurt him, because his coworker did not hurt the Joker himself. Then the Joker let him go, and he was nice to him. And that's another interesting take on it, where it's like, does that mean he was only hurting people that hurt him? Because that doesn't make him a good person. He still is a murderer. He still becomes irredeemable. But it's just, I thought. The reason people are confused as to what the message of this movie is because Todd Phillips did a good job in leaving things very in a more subtle way that way. And he did the same thing with the Thomas Wayne and Joker's mom, which you don't know necessarily who's telling the truth about their relationship, right? And so you can end up thinking, oh, Thomas Wayne's kind of being a dick, but then the Joker's mom, like she was a manipulative dick to her son as well, right?
Okay, but I don't even know if I think he's being a dick. Like if you found out some strange man had his fingers in your son's mouth, would you not punch him out in the bathroom?
Oh, for sure.
Like that's way out of line.
But it is, and that's what's interesting though, but then you also think that he was kind of mean to just be like, no, you're not my son, bye. Like if somebody comes to me and says, oh, I'm your son, like my mom told me this, it's like you have to think about this person's been believing this their entire
sure.
lives. Like, so I feel like they did show a more gray version of the Wayne characters, and I really enjoyed that because we don't get to see that, and that makes for a more interesting portrayal of Gotham in general, and how everybody that's on the lower end of the economy is frustrated with these people, and you can understand why the Joker then gains these followers, right? So I thought that was really well done.
It's interesting. I mean, the question of like, is he only hurting people who hurt him? I think that from what I've read in interviews, that seems to be the stance of the filmmakers. It's definitely not the Joker's general philosophy, so that's interesting. Obviously,
and maybe that's just him becoming the Joker in this movie, right?
Well, I was just going to say, obviously, this is a possible origin story and not even necessarily true because of how the film ends. Yeah. But it takes risks, it takes strides. I liked a lot of those aspects of it. I think all the performances are great, and Joaquin Phoenix does deserve the attention he's getting, regardless of how you feel about the film. In the beginning of the film, again, I really was not feeling it. I was like, oh, this is everything I didn't want it to be. And I found it very obvious and over the top, and even
I agree.
His performance, I was like, is he going to do this the whole movie? Like, because, it's good, but it's one thing until it's not.
Right.
And then it's very special.
Yes. And I agree that I was nervous, and I was so excited and nervous because of, I was trying to get rid of all the talk around it. And I went on premiere night, and I was just sitting there like, I was out of the movie, like watching the first 20 minutes. I'm like, oh, I don't know if I like this. What is this? And then just like 30 minutes in, it completely grabbed me, and I was so happy. As soon as we see him murder those rich douchebags, and then he does that bathroom dance, I will say that I'm a nerd. I started getting teary-eyed because I felt like somebody understood that part of the character as to why this chaotic being came to be because of the chaotic society he grew up in.
My thing about it is I like all that stuff, but I feel like you're smarter than the movie. I'm going to get in trouble for saying that, but I feel that it's a film that wants to say a lot of things about society, but only says very surface level things. And so, it's also really funny to me that he literally yells the film's thesis before he shoots him in the face. I was like, that's really obvious, guys. It's not a subtle movie, and it's not, the last time you were on the show, we talked about Suspiria, and I had notes, and I had to, really ponderously dive into it because that is a film that has 47 layers that it's working on. I mean, you think you get the cultural layer, there's the psychological layer, what's Freud's thing? Psychoanalysis, not even psychology, psychoanalysis. There's gender, there's motherhood, there's that is to me a film that's operating on almost too many levels, except that it just pulls it off barely. This is sort of the opposite end of the spectrum to me, where it's saying one thing very loudly. That does less for me personally, and I wish that it had a little more nuance in what it's trying to say about society. Right. But it does say it's one thing very clearly.
I mean, I can agree with some of that for sure. Suspiria is a much, it's a movie that I was obsessed with for different reasons that you and I obsessed over together. It definitely, it's different type of storytelling that I prefer. However, because I went into this movie thinking it is a comic-based movie, that's why I think I felt like it took more chances at everything we'd been seeing the last few years, and my frustration with the superhero genre in general, that yes, they're fun and they're funny and some of the action sequences are cool, but since Logan, I hadn't seen a character-driven movie, right? And I find myself preferring those, and we don't see a lot of those in these big franchise movies. So that's, I think, probably why I gave it a little bit more leeway in the sense that I was like, oh, it's smarter than these other movies.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it totally does. And I don't disagree. I mean, I think on that spectrum, it's definitely doing more than we've come to expect in terms of commentary and societal thought. I do wish that it just came without the baggage, because you used the word I was thinking about a lot last night, which is fear-mongering, and how much we let our perceptions of a project get ahead of actually seeing the thing these days. I mean, I think like the worst example of that is what happened with The Hunt. Like, that's insane.
Yeah. I still can't believe that happened. It pisses me off.
Yeah.
Because that just makes for censorship.
It's right on the line.
Yeah, it makes for people not. The thing about art is that it is an expression of our current societal times, right? Like whatever is going on in the world, that's why we're huge horror fans, right? I feel like we love movies and we love entertainment and art because it's almost therapeutic for us, right? Like whatever we're dealing with personally, like our own, emotional inner darkness or inner demons, and then comparing that to not understanding the world and its craziness. That's why we use movies as escapism, but we also use them as something to help us deal with the crazy world, right? So there shouldn't be. I don't think anybody should be allowed to be like, no, don't show this because it makes me uncomfortable.
Oh yeah, no, I don't agree with that either. Which is why I think that nobody should be allowed to do that, but I do think filmmakers are responsible to a certain extent for the ideas that they intentionally put into the world, not the crazy things people take from your movie you weren't trying to say in the first place.
Right.
But that's different. Like, that's a different conversation than that movie shouldn't exist. And I don't know, like this movie just didn't need that. Like, it's really not that
not at all
provocative.
And that's what's funny too, is that I tell you that my friends that aren't nerds, that are just casual movie fans that just go to the movies because they're like, oh, I guess I'll see this Joker movie because I know who the character is. But it's not like they go and see every comic book movie out there, right? A lot of them told me, that was a great movie. It made me feel like I need to be kinder to people.
That's good.
Which is, like, I guess a lot of people in the space were surprised to hear that, but that's what a lot of casual moviegoers took from it. And it's that maybe I'm hoping that that's a good thing, and I'm hoping that that's what's happening and why it's made so much money.
Yeah. I mean, that's awesome. I definitely, like, when I talk about the film's empathy, I also can see the read on it. That's like, if you were in that character's sort of mental state, you might watch that movie and go, what a great idea. I'll just stop taking my medication and see who I really am and dive into that darkness and like things like that. But again, that's on us as a society, how we process film. It's not on film to teach us who to be. Right.
I mean, it's also people in real life, not movies, that do bad things. It's not like they were all raised, by horrible parents that told them to be that way, right? Like, something happens to these people in their lives where they either snap or it's years and years of horrible circumstances, like whatever it may be. But I don't think most people are, unless you're indoctrinated into a horrible group where you're actually trying to, terrorize humans, right?
Sure.
That's not the case. That's just not the case. So it's the same thing as like, yeah, when you're watching a movie, like, movies don't cause violence. That's just not, I just don't believe that. Just same with video games. I think that's such a, what causes violence is people, societal, I guess, what's the right word I'm looking for? What causes violence is how we raise our kids and how and what's going on and what circumstances people are going through. Because when we're lucky that we are stressed out in our jobs and we have a lot of work to do and we're overworked and we definitely have normal issues, but there's people out there that live under horrible circumstances that don't have the same opportunities we do.
For sure.
And I'm not saying I agree with the choices they make sometimes, but I understand, like I said, their pain and suffering and why somebody would react in a horrible way.
Sure.
And it's up to us to, help not stop that from happening.
Right. I just think there's like this idea that, like, I don't know, I'm I'm getting a little too deep into my thoughts about like the responsibility of filmmakers and how we receive their art. But like, I don't have whatever the thing is that means you have to agree with a movie to appreciate it. And when I think about this kind of stuff, I think a lot because my ideas have gotten more complicated on the matter since when I was younger, where I was like, no, movies do not cause violence, which I still pretty much agree with. However, I think that they can when like our culture isn't able to process the things they're talking about, and instead they become not a single film. That's not what I'm saying. Although I do admit I have recurring nightmares of public shootings, and I did not go to the theater for Joker. That was one of the reasons was I did not want to get shot.
And that's understandable because we are all scared all the time about that. Yes.
But I always think about sort of like the trope of rapey stuff in sex comedies and teen comedies that was so popular for so long, and how we've seen over the last few years very clearly that we have a problem with how we view sex and women in American society. And that's worldwide, but I can only speak from my own experience. But again, that's very tricky because it's not like the movies pulled that behavior out of nowhere. They learned that from us. They held a mirror to it, but at the same time, by making it funny, it made it more endearing.
Totally.
So these are like complicated issues that I don't think there's a simple answer to, but ultimately I always land on the side of like, rapists aren't the fault of 80s movies.
Right.
It's that we didn't point at that and go, that's bad. That's not what you should do. That's on us. It's not on the film.
Right. No, that's a really good point that you bring up because especially growing up in the, watching 80s movies and loving so many of them, but even seeing like something like John Hughes, which I love a lot of his films, but 16 Candles has some stuff in there you watch it now and you're like, that's not okay. And when we were kids, if a kid's watching that, they're thinking, oh, this is like a comedy, like a teenage comedy, then, I guess it's okay to treat women that way, right? So if nobody, you are right that the filmmaker does have a form of responsibility there to at least make it clear that, in the movie, okay, if this is happening, let's portray this character as an actual douchebag. Right. You know what I mean? Not as like a hero or a sidekick, right? So there is definitely truth to that. But it's at the end of the day, there should be somebody there to be like, that's wrong, right? Like that's
right. Or if the movie doesn't do that for you, then the parent of that child should do that.
Right. It's just about. I think that the issue that bothers me with the current times and people saying don't see this movie or people bring up the term political correctness, which can mean so many different things to people, but the fact that I guess how do I say this? I'm like, how do I not piss people off? It's like I'm going to piss people off no matter what.
Right.
But if we are responsible for or not if we are responsible for how we raise humans and I think people that it's not about education on a level of school, it's about education as to like how to treat other people with decency. Right? That's who we should be as a society. It's like we need to treat each other with decency and kindness. Right. And then you can use art for filmmakers to release their own demons and to show yes, humans are capable of doing all of these horrible things, but you still have the choice as a human to not do them. Does that make sense? Yeah.
I think we're pretty much on the same page as usual. Yeah, it's I do think it's more of a horror movie than it's getting credit for.
It is.
And it's definitely, the movie's not saying, like, in terms of what we were just discussing, it's not saying this is a great idea, be like this guy. He's really happy and successful. That's not the message of the film.
No, I mean, the end of the movie is him standing on the car with that, bloody smile and his followers praising him, but the score is like dark and sad. It's not celebrating that. No. It's saying that that's what happens sometimes, when you get people riled up because of their own circumstances as well. But my point earlier about the whole political correctness thing is that I just think that there's nothing wrong with having a conversation about it.
Yeah,
and
totally.
that's what art does. Is like we can talk about it. There's nothing wrong with talking about violence and whatever like you said like earlier, bad things that happen like rape, right? Because if we talk about them, we avoid them from happening later.
Right. Yes. Just gotta calm down a second to have the conversation is what has to happen.
Yes.
Because screaming at each other online does not have the effect we'd hope it would.
No, let's not raise kids on Twitter.
Let's not.
Except for the memes and the awesome accounts like Zone Physics, because I love those.
Oh, I don't know what that is. I'll have to add it.
Yeah.
Well, we also we're going to touch on another comic book adaptation, Reboot. No, it's a readaptation for sure. But that also has come out swinging with incredible moves of reinvention, which is the Watchmen series.
Yes.
And I am shocked because I thought it was going to be a lot more controversial than it actually is. I saw the first episode back in July, and granted, I saw it in the vacuum of only seeing the first episode, but I was like, people are going to lose their goddamn minds. We're going to have an internet civil war over this series. And then it didn't happen.
Right.
And I find that so compelling because arguably, Watchmen is tapping into even more dangerous societal commentary, more provocative. But people are not freaking out over it.
You haven't. I mean, I've seen a little bit, but not as much as with something like The Joker, for sure. Like,
Yeah, of course. There's always going to be a little bit.
Yeah. But no, you're right. Yeah, everyone seems to really be loving the show, as far as I've talked to like nerds and non-nerds.
Yeah, and like, I don't know. I thought there was going to be more backlash to the politics of it, but maybe it's done such a good job of obscuring its politics, kind of, in the alt reality.
Right.
I mean, I think it's not that obscured. It's pretty easy to say what it's or see what it's saying.
Right.
But it is a little confusing to be like the police are the ones being attacked by the racists. And they can't use their guns. What is this show saying? Like, all that kind of stuff is very complicated. It's not easy to point a finger at it and go, what you're doing is bad and wrong because it doesn't line up with what I believe in because, wait, I don't exist in the world of this show at all.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what's fascinating about it because, I mean, and you obviously, because Haleigh is like one of the best writers. She, whenever you write about Watchmen for Collider, I'm always like, what did she write?
Oh, thank you.
But I think you touched upon the fact that probably why we both love the show so much, which is it's more an exploration of just how I think you said the surreality of human existence.
That sounds like me.
Yeah. And just our own self-identity and all of these not just our social and political ideologies, but just existing as a human. And I think the show has done that so brilliantly with all its characters, right? And not especially, I was very excited to see Jeremy Irons in this because because it's Jeremy Irons and I just love everything he does. But I wasn't sure what they were going to be doing with these characters as, in this alternate future reality that we have them. And what his character is going through completely makes sense. And that's brilliant because that's very hard to do, especially when that hasn't been written, right? So I think that's my favorite part of the show, that they've done such a good job about with these characters. What would happen to them in such a smart, unique way that I'm very surprised in a good way by it, if that makes sense.
No, yeah, I think that nobody kind of does that as well as Lindelof right now, and I would say that because I'm a freaking diehard evangelist for The Leftovers. It's just
I keep hearing that, man. I gotta watch that show.
You really do. And that show is also all about that wacky, what does it mean to exist? Everything is nonsense, or is it type thing. It's also one of those shows, and I think that this helps them with the sort of philosophical existential element, is that it is not content to exist in any genre. Like it pulls devices from every type of filmmaking and every type of storytelling to make its points, which makes it, much like the politics of the show, very hard to pin down and almost just from like a I don't know, like a technical admiring what they've pulled off. It's very hard to wrap your head around it. Like, what is this show?
Yeah.
What does it exist as? Is this a drama? There's comedy, there's action, there's horror elements, definitely. It's sort of everything.
Well, it just seems like a really well-crafted mess of what, of saying, okay, like it's a good mirror of our society in the sense that we all want to be so, we get so caught up on like, these are my beliefs. And this is what side I'm choosing, and fuck the other side, and I feel like we shouldn't be that way. Humanity, and we are much more gray beings than that, right? We shouldn't be black and white ever. And I mean, there's maybe not murder. That's like black and white.
Probably not the best.
Yeah, like that. There's a couple of
there's
things,
some
right?
Stuff.
Yeah, but yeah, it's awesome to see a show that's taking those chances and not necessarily telling you this is what you should believe, but presenting you with all of these different types of circumstances that people are going through, and even empathizing with different types of people that you may not, but or the fact that you understand why things are happening, right? So you may not. I feel like we don't have to align ourselves with a belief system necessarily. Like, you should have your philosophy, your faith, your religion, whatever, you may believe in that way. But when it comes to politics, I just don't like picking sides. I feel like we work better as humans when we talk about these things and be like, oh, you have a point there. Maybe we should meet in the middle, if that makes sense. And I feel like that to me is what the show is showing, that it's like whatever side you're choosing, it's still problematic.
I agree with that, and I think that it's also like, it's super good at dancing through or not just morals are not the same as politics. The show has very clear morals. There's no part of the show that's not saying racism is bad.
Right.
But that's a moral issue, not a political one, unless you make it a political issue.
Exactly. Yes.
It's very well done. And I mean, I'm just obsessed with it, Dorina. Obsessed.
As you know, if I'm a huge soundtrack nerd, I've been listening to the score by Atticus Ross and Trent Reznor like every day.
I know.
I'm obsessed with it. I think it all elevates an already amazing show. And I hope that they do more stuff together, because I think the last one I was obsessed with theirs was Gone Girl. So.
Oh, yeah. Love that movie.
That's a great movie, too.
Yeah.
There you go. Yeah.
Also right on the line of horror.
Yeah.
That I listen to None with a Motherfucking Gun like probably every morning to get amped for the day now.
Right.
I'm curious to see how much of it, because it did drop so late in the year, how much of it will end up in my Spotify Top 100.
Right.
I think a lot.
Yeah.
Because I keep listening to a lot of the tracks.
Yeah, same here.
Over and over and over.
Totally going to end up on that list for me as well.
Yeah. So good.
It's really great.
It's just like, how are they so good, though? we were talking about the Social Network score recently and how it's probably gotta be the best of the decade. I mean, there are some competitors.
I mean, I will fight you on that, but yes, it's one of the best.
What would you fight it with?
Well, I don't. Oh man, I mean, it's funny. I've done my nerdy top 10 list of the year of like best scores on my dorky YouTube channel, and one of my favorites is Phantom Thread by Johnny Greenwood.
Genuinely hilarious that when I said there are some competitors, that's the one I was thinking
really?
of. Yes.
Yeah, well, and it's funny because it's so different, right?
Yeah.
Because the Social Network score, like most of the stuff that Trent and Atticus do is through synthesizers, right? But I guess I was so pleasantly surprised with Phantom Thread, not because Johnny Greenwood, I mean, he's already great. Radiohead, he's done all the other scores with Paul Thomas Anderson, but it was just so orchestral and like almost Debussy-like. Like it was just like throwback to really in your face, classical music sounding soundtracks. And I was obsessed with it. I couldn't stop listening to it. And it's and it's a beautiful score for basically what to me is a dark romantic comedy, right? So it just fits so perfectly.
Yeah, I love that. That's fucking funny that's the one you picked, because that was exactly what was on my mind.
That's funny. Also, speaking of horror, Mandy by Johan Johansson. I really love that one too.
Great one. And speaking of Radiohead, the Suspiria score is quite something.
Dude, especially after being obsessed with Goblin's original score.
Yeah, exactly.
Good on Tom York, man, because that's hard to pull off. To create something that's that fits so well for the movie, but that's so different than like the prog rock stuff that Goblin did. Good on him.
I used to walk around campus in Santa Cruz when I was at college, and if you're not familiar with Santa Cruz, which I think probably most people aren't, it is
in Us, right?
It is, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe a little bit more this year then.
And Lost Boys.
And Lost Boys, correct. But most people only know it for that sort of boardwalk type vibe that they use in those movies, like the beachy ambiance.
Right.
It's also, it's like beach and forest, right side by side. So the campus for UCSC is literally like dropped into a forest. So you hike to class and everything.
Okay.
And on the gloomiest days when I would hike to class, I would always listen to the Suspiria score.
Nice.
It was just like my anthem, I can't tell you how many times I accidentally stepped on a banana slug while listening to Suspiria. It's really disgusting.
Yeah.
But reason I bring that up is because, just like you said, I love that thing so much.
Yeah.
I listened to it my whole life. It became a ritual, is what I'm saying. And still, somehow he pulled it off. And now I listen to his a lot, and probably maybe even more right now.
It's kind of crazy because I saw Goblin. I've seen Goblin perform live a couple of times, so that was really crazy for me. In fact, one of them was at the Egyptian for Beyond Fest, and they brought out a ballerina. And she was dancing live. I was like, "What is going on?"
That's
I was like, "Is this real life?" But then I saw Tom York recently, and he played the track "Has Ended."
Nice.
And I was like, when he's like witches, I was like, me. I was so excited. And yes, Suspirium, the main theme song, that was like my top one listen of last year on my Spotify. So there you go.
Yeah, there
We're
we go.
Super nerdy about this.
I love that. Yeah, it's always going to happen that I'm going to bring us to Suspiria somehow.
Yeah.
It's kind of ridiculous how I've done it twice in one show.
It's a great movie.
It's the best.
Both of them.
They are both
really
fantastic.
Fantastic movies.
But back to Watchmen just for a few more minutes, because I'm going to do... You're caught up?
I have not seen the last one.
Then never mind.
But are you done? Because you got some episodes early, right?
I'm up to the one that airs this week, episode
Okay.
6. Maybe that'll be the one to start the Twitter war.
Well, there you go.
It's really something. But yeah, I am just as in the dark about how they are going to freaking pull off an ending to this thing as anyone.
Is it 8 episodes?
It's 9.
Okay.
I have no idea how they're going to do it. Just trying to think, how do you top a genetically engineered interdimensional psychic squid as an ending? Mm-hmm. I don't know. Not even top, match. How do you... And they are very faithfully, playing to the comic and mirroring the structure and the tone of the comic. And I know they're going to try to mirror that ending somehow, and I cannot imagine for the life of me what that's going to look like.
Right. Because you... I think I've said this on some of our shows before that because you wrote an article about the Watchmen movie ending.
Yeah.
You actually liked it.
I do.
As opposed to other people. And I agree with you. And I love the breakdown that you did as to why it works more for film purposes as opposed to reading something on a graphic novel.
Thank you.
So yeah, I'm as equally curious. Now, do you know if this is it or are they doing a second season?
They haven't really confirmed or denied, but Lindelof has been clear that he designed his story as one story,
Right.
and that should it come back, he probably wouldn't.
Right.
But he's also said, there's so much to do in the world that someone else should.
Yeah.
But I think that he had one very specific obsession as a Watchmen fan that he wanted to explore, and I get the sense he will have fully explored it by the end of the season.
Right.
I would say more, but I can't right now. We can talk about them more openly soon.
Okay.
But I kind of almost, as much as I love it, hope it's one.
What do you mean?
The one season.
Oh, right. No, me too. That's why I was asking, because I feel like that's better storytelling always when you
Yeah.
just have a set plan for a certain number of episodes and then you're done. Like Heroes, great first season.
Yeah, I love that show.
Yeah,
and then I didn't.
That's when I should have ended.
Yeah, correct.
That's what happens.
Yeah, it's not going to be one season though, because everything is driven by money and it's clearly a big hit. So
Yep.
unfortunately, no. But we will hopefully, if it ends well, always have one very well constructed season.
Exactly.
That
Yes.
I think they took forever to write. Like clearly.
Obviously,
Yeah.
because I was like, this is not something that was done, by like farting for 2 seconds. Yeah.
Yeah,
Like, they wrote
exactly.
that, yeah, very well.
I know they have, as many shows do, like a sort of Bible of the world, and I would be so desperate to read it.
Agreed.
All the hidden details and laws of the world they built. And
Now, do you feel like you're obsessed with this more than any other comic book property in a while? Like-
interesting.
Like, I don't even know if, like, what's something that you grew up obsessed with, like, whether it was superhero or non-superhero graphic novel-wise.
Oh, what I was obsessed with growing up? Well, non-comic book Buffy was my number one thing.
Nice.
Comic books, Spider-Man, Batman, Harley Quinn, Joker. Those were like my comic obsessions. Right now, I would say, yeah, this. And I fell pretty deeply hard for Endgame.
Okay.
I loved that movie.
I really liked it, too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't like Infinity War, and I really loved
Same.
Endgame. Yeah.
Totally same.
Yeah, I feel like Infinity War, I was just like, well, this is just like nothing. It's just a lot of action sequences. Like, I like
Yeah.
Thanos. Like, there was but a lot of the character-driven story that they brought to Endgame was just my jam, much more than the other one.
Would you say that Joker is like the hardest you've gone in for anything in a while?
You mean comic book wise?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like I said, probably since Logan. Like, Logan was the last movie that was in the comic book universe that I got obsessed with, and they're both character-driven stories, so that makes sense. But I was very pleasantly surprised by Endgame because MCU is always hit or miss for me. I don't love everything like other people do. Like, I'm not a huge fan of Infinity War or Civil War. Like, they're fine. I just never really like Winter Soldier. Loved it. Like, Winter Soldier is one of my favorite comic book movies of all time. But in recent years, I'm like, oh yeah, Thor Ragnarok's fun, but none of them have grabbed me emotionally like Logan did, or Endgame, or Joker. So
Because not enough people were dying.
correct.
Clearly based on your picks.
I mean, I'm basically dressed as Neil Gaiman's death today, so you know.
No, that's fair. I generally like almost all of them. Not all of them, but almost. But I could see how if your tastes skew darker, something like Spider-Man Homecoming would just be fun.
I actually like that one a lot.
I love that one.
Yeah, but that was because it doesn't have to be about death for me to like it. It's more so just that felt also like I was getting to know the characters really well in that high school. Like, it made me feel like I was going to high school with all these kids, and it felt like almost like a John Hughes movie. Also, Michael Keaton.
Come on.
Come on. He's one of, I mean, we haven't gotten great MCU villains, and he's up there. Not so much as, in the Vulture get up, but him just in that scene.
He's wonderful.
In the scene with the car where he's talking to Peter and
Yeah.
basically just like not even yelling. He's just like, yeah, you're like super threatening and scary. Like, that's amazing. That's hard to pull off. So.
It's really good.
Yeah.
And it's a perfect construct of every teenage boy's worst fear of meeting the father. Beautiful.
Slipped in with like him being like, I know you're Spider-Man, so don't fuck with me. Like, that was really cool.
I love that movie. I'm so glad you do too. No, and obviously I'm jesting about you only liking dark films. For fuck's sake, like I can't even tell you how many people die in Thor Ragnarok. Like, it's one of the most killy movies out there.
I know, but then it's really funny too. So
Yeah,
that's what's
exactly.
so weird.
Well, it comes across as light, but it's very violent.
Right?
Yeah.
Exactly. It's like, oh, just a whole planet just blew up.
Yeah,
basically. It's like,
exactly.
yeah, that's not good.
Guardians of the Galaxy has that too.
Yeah.
I think it's the most deaths in a Marvel movie is in, well, until Infinity War, but
Right. Because
Yeah,
Ferris
that was a
Bueller.
lot. And that was the whole galaxy, so whatever. Hard to compete with. But yeah, there's that whole wall of jet fighters or whatever on Nova that just gets obliterated.
Right.
It's like thousands of people die in the middle of the action scene.
And then somebody makes a pun.
Yeah,
and you're
exactly.
like, what happened? Well, the people.
We didn't know them.
Yeah. So I don't get it. Maybe that's why, though, that type of stuff bothers me. Because I'm like, you got to be upset if somebody. Like in Infinity War, the one death that got me with Spider-Man.
Well, yeah.
Right. Well, not only because they're both great actors, but it's because of how it was handled. Right.
Yeah.
It felt a little bit more like, oh, yeah, I understand how scary how scary that is and how scared he felt.
I mean, he's a truly gifted actor. That young man is annoyingly talented.
Yes.
Tone it down.
Also a great dancer.
I know, annoyingly talented.
Yeah.
Cut this shit out.
Right.
Stop doing so many flips and beautiful performances.
He was dancing
It's
like
exhausting.
Rihanna with looking super hot in that way.
Still iconic.
Yeah.
We love you, Tom Holland, as does every other human.
Also other Tom Holland.
Yes, very much so. I remember being at the my first screening of Endgame, and he was the one that when he came back, everybody in the theater clapped. Everyone loved Spider-Man.
Yeah. I think it's great because it's hard to bring back a character that way and do it so well.
And then become like the favorite.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. That's interesting. We were just talking. There's so many adaptations of everything. You'll have your pick. Don't get too bent out of shape about any one of them.
Mm-hmm.
I used to always say that about people who were really mad about Batfleck. I was like, there are like 6 Batmans.
Yeah.
Watch one of those.
I used to be that, and now I've grown.
It's fine. I don't think I have yet been furious about casting, but I'm sure I'll get there one day.
I am still pissed about Jesse Eisenberg. No offense to him, but it's not the type of Lex Luthor I wanted to see.
That's
all.
totally fair.
Yeah, I just wanted like Bryan Cranston or somebody
hell
older and scarier.
I get what they were going for, though,
Yeah.
because definitely startup tech moguls are terrifying.
For sure.
But it's just,
He did a fine job with what he had. I just
Yeah.
wish the character was written differently.
yeah, I'm not crazy about it either.
Yeah.
I won't lie. I don't love that.
I do like Jolly Ranchers though. So
All right, there we go. Well, before we run out of time, because we can talk forever.
right. How long is this usually? Like an hour? Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
We're almost done.
Oh man. See, Haleigh and I can talk for hours.
I know,
Yeah.
and we didn't even get to our actual what we were gonna do, but that's okay because I like this way better.
We can do it another
We'll
episode.
do a quick one.
Yeah.
We were gonna talk about like the actual horror remakes and reboots. So we just kind of talked about readaptations today, which is honestly way more interesting to me. But either coming up or not coming up that are super interesting. And when I put together the list to send you last night, I didn't realize there were like, 5 or 6 next year coming
Right.
up?
Yeah. Yeah. Like what is it? Like The Grudge?
The Grudge, Saw, Candyman, Fantasy Island. Oh, gosh, I know I'm forgetting some. I should just open the freaking chat window.
Are you excited about Candyman?
I am.
Because when was that? Like 80s? Was that the last time
It's
we saw?
either late 80s or early 90s.
Yeah, I that's speaking of soundtracks. That's one of my favorite horror soundtracks of all time.
Beautiful.
It's probably my favorite thing Philip Glass has done, and I
Yeah.
love that man. It was Philip Glass, right?
I believe you are correct. Yes, I was like Philip Glass or Howard Shore, but I think you're right.
Yeah, no, because I have the vinyl because I'm a dork. So.
No, it's an incredible soundtrack. A couple Halloweens ago when I was very, very drunk, I like dragged my friends down to their basement and I was like, just listen to it.
It's so good.
It's so good.
And creepy.
Yeah, I'm really curious. The score, that's like another one of those Suspiria situations where whoever does it has a lot to live up to. Speaking of Watchmen, Yahya Abdul-Mateen, I think he is extraordinary. And I don't think they've quite confirmed if he's playing the Candyman or another character, but he has to be playing Candyman.
He has to be.
He's
that makes more
perfect.
sense. Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. Yeah, no, I'm excited about that. I think you and I both love both Fright Nights.
Yes,
Correct?
yes.
Both of the amazing Chris Sarandon, because Chris
Obviously.
Sarandon's like the coolest ever. But I hope that we get more remakes like that, because that Fright Night remake did such a good job of modernizing the story in a way that was that you're not just copying everything from the original and you're making it your own and bring it to like Vegas. Like it made so much sense that David Tennant was this douchey Chris Angel character instead of going back to what was his name in original Fright Night?
Oh wow. Vincent.
Yes, like the Vincent Price type character. Damn it.
My brain. But yes.
Peter Vincent.
Peter Vincent.
That's
There
what
we
it was.
go.
Yeah.
And same to be said of Colin Farrell's performance as the vampire. Like, you can't do Chris Sarandon again. First of all, that doesn't work in the 2000s. That's a very specifically 80s type of sexy.
Oh yeah, like the turtleneck with the pear. Only like, Chris Sarandon can pull that off.
Very unique type of hot. Yeah.
I still love it, but yes.
Yeah.
You can't do that with that hair nowadays.
And Colin Farrell is updated. He's meaner. He's leaner. He's actually scary.
Right.
But you're also like, yeah, still probably would, because that's how vampires work.
Right.
I love that movie. I was so excited when you said you did too.
Yeah. Yeah. So hopefully we get more remakes like that. Hopefully The Grudge is like that. Hopefully Saw. Why are you so excited about Saw?
Saw. So kind of for the reasons you just said, the update type thing.
Okay.
Also because it shouldn't exist. Like, I wouldn't be surprised to find out that I'm either in a simulation or in a coma that started a few years ago. And every so often something comes along where I'm like, yeah, it's probably true.
I think we're all in purgatory, personally.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so there you go.
I see. It's too ridiculous to be something like that. That's my thing, is that things are too stupid to be true. So one of those being Chris Rock writing a Saw movie.
Right.
It's too stupid to be true.
Right.
And that's fascinating to me.
Yeah.
What does Chris Rock love about Saw so much that he wanted to bring it back, update it, star in it,
right,
and write it? And then they got back one of the original and best-liked directors from the franchise, and Darren Lynn Bousman. So, like, they're clearly not going to leave behind totally the aesthetic and tone of it.
Right.
I have no idea what it's going to be, and that to me is completely compelling.
I agree. And also because I wasn't ever really a huge fan of like the torture porn movies, right? Like when I saw Hostel, I was like, this is a good movie, but I don't know if I can watch it again because that's disturbing to me, right? Even though it's fascinating to see like the makeup and all that stuff that they do. But yeah, no, I'm excited to see what he does because like Jordan Peele has done such a brilliant job with horror, and I think it's because he understands comedy. I don't know what it is about like comedians that just maybe understand the horrors of life, and that's why they turn to comedy as a release. So I'm excited to see what he does.
I think that's part of it. I also think it's a sense of timing, which nothing depends on timing more than comedy and horror. It's exactly. Like they're two opposites. They're like the the tragedy comedy mask from theater, except the tragedy one really is horror now because we don't really make tragedies in the classic sense much anymore.
Right.
In film, it's comedy and horror are these opposite sides of the creative spectrum to me.
I remember I used to think my life is a tragedy.
No.
Now I realize it's a comedy. I just quoted the Joker.
I don't get it. I want to talk about so much more, but we are out of time.
Womp womp.
Womp womp. Come back. Hang out with us. Be on Wishing Hour whenever you want. We love you.
I love you, Haleigh.
I love you too, Dorina.
And we love Perri and we miss her.
We always love Perri and miss her. But she's having the time of her life.
She is a crazy person, but jumping.
I know. Here we are. Like, we're hard and we love horror and dark things. She's like, I'm flirting with death.
I know. That's our Perri for you.
Yeah, exactly. With the biggest smile you've ever seen.
It's crazy. But thank you so much for having me, Haleigh. Always a pleasure speaking with you of all the things, especially horror.
Oh, honestly, all the things. But yes, always horror. Where can people find you aside from literally every day on this same channel?
And now you guys are going to get sick of me because I'm now with Roxy Stryer. I'm the new host of Collider Live, and I've been doing it every day, and it's kind of crazy. And thank you so much, everybody, for the support. It's been amazing.
You guys are killing it.
We hope we're it's slowly getting there. It's a new show, so we're trying to find our vibe. But I've been having a lot of fun. I love the team. Cody's a fucking amazing genius, and Mark Riley, obviously. And then, yes, I am always tweeting away really dumb things on the internet. You can find me on Twitter at Evil Dorina and on Instagram.
Yay. All right. And you can find me, I'm like trying to find a way to put off ending this, but it's not going to happen. So you can find me on Twitter at Haleigh Fauci. You can find me on Instagram at Haystack McGroovy. And, I've never got to say this before. You have officially survived the witching hour.
Ooh.